Hello, everybody. It's Whiskey Friday at Communica, and it's Johan and William to come direct from Solna Strand in a day that you really would not want to be on the beach. Today, we're going to talk about management platforms for routers. And let's just start with the question, Johan. Why would you need a management platform for a router? Because if your router's not working, you just reboot it, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you have like 10 routers and you get a good quality router, it'll probably work and you won't have that many problems. The things comes when you have like 10,000 routers. That's where the problem starts because you need to work in a different way if you have a lot of routers. I mean, if you look at a management platform, it's a nice to have feature if you have like 5, 10, 15 routers. It's a must have platform if you have like 5, 6, 700s or more because you need to keep them up to date. You need to keep them configured, right? So that's, like I say, it's depending on the size of the company or the size of the implementation. Well, the management platform is a big deal. The bigger the company, the bigger the instance, the more you need it.
So as I understand it, they come in both cloud versions and on-premise versions. Cloud being obviously your, just like you use Facebook, that all your data is stored in the cloud as such, and on the vendor's data center, maybe AWS or Azure or something of that nature, or on-prem where the customer has the software on their own servers. What does it matter?
Well, if you look, I mean, we're based in Europe, we're based in Sweden. Here, if you're like a small company, you probably don't mind having it in the cloud because it's easy. You don't have to host something yourself. It's just running something else. Someone else is doing it for you. And if you have like 10, 50, 20 routers, whatever, not a problem. You just pay someone to host it or to pay the vendor to actually run it for you. And you just log into the webpage and use it. No problem at all. If you're an American company, probably cloud is good for you because you're under other type of legal requirements. But when you're in Europe and you're either a big company or you're a governmental company, you probably will need your on-prem installation or on-premise installation. And that's basically come down to, if you look at the customers we have today, I mean, if you're in like public transportation, you're in like water treatment, maybe you're in electrical substations, something that is, critical to the society, to the infrastructure, you're in banking, whatever, you will probably not even have your routers on the internet. They will be basically on a private network. I mean, maybe not a private 5G network or something like that, but they will have a private APN.
What does APN stand for?
Access point name.
Okay.
Anyway.
And every operator has their own APN, right?
Yeah, they have. I mean, usually you just use the APN that the operator has to get your internet access, like from your phone and from your standard router. But in this case, you can choose to have your specific APN, which actually means that the operator will send you a router, like here, this router you'll install in your network, and all the SIM cards are terminated in that router. And that is what many of these bigger companies or government instances will use because they don't want traffic be traveling on the internet at all when it comes to very specific needs. If you go to really high-end stuff, some of them even are their own network operators. So
you actually can run cellular data not on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, some of the really big government organizations are what we call virtual network operator. They will basically use the operator's infrastructure, the radio infrastructure, but they'll have their own cellular core network internally, which means that the SIM cards will only talk to your core, and that means that it never passes through your regular internet. So what we see today is all the big instances we have out there are requiring on-premise installations. So if you're looking for something like this, and if you're in Europe or your customers are in Europe, you will most likely be required either by some regulations for the industry, regulations on where you can have your data, or like you say, you are security. You're aware of the security issues, and you will not have something to traverse the normal internet, and you want to keep it in your own environment, and then you need your own on-premise installation for the management software.
Great. So let's say we implement a management platform for our routers, and now we've put in all our routers. What is our workflow?
Yeah, that's another thing that you have to look in for the different platforms. I mean, if you have like 10 routers, people usually tend to just manage them one by one. They like do the settings in the platform, or they do the settings in the router itself, and just see, oh, my router is online, there is no problem with them. But if you come up with like a couple of thousand routers, or maybe a couple of hundred routers, you start to work in a different type of workflow, which basically means that you probably will do like a more enterprise grade on how you attack this management. Normally, you just don't do standoff configurations of them. You build a template. You test that template. It could include firmwares, it can include specific software that's deployed to routers, it is the settings, and you will test that out. You will test on going back to a different template and going back to forward to new template, checking out that everything works. How many you ever try it out? And this is something you need to check on the platform because a big company or big government instance will probably have a really more focused workflow on testing stuff before deploying. So they have a lab. They test it in the lab saying, will my router work with the devices I have here? Maybe that's a payment terminal. Maybe that's an ATM. Maybe that's like
a lab being a test environment.
Yeah, you have a test environment. Then when you're happy in the test environment, you save that template, and you will basically do test on live instances. Like, okay, I'll take 10 routers, I deploy this. Does it actually work like we thought it works? Did it work in like the test environment? And when you think you're like, okay, this is really good, now I can deploy it to all my routers.
A little bit at a time, so you don't take down everything all at once.
Yeah. And hopefully your lab environment, it looks very, very much like your regular environment, but there is a totally different workflow. And as soon as you start asking these big companies how they work, you'll see that this will work in different ways in different companies. But it all comes down to it's not like
there's no one right, no one wrong.
No, it isn't. So that's another thing with it. I mean, you need to be able to adapt everything to your workflow. And maybe you want to have the firmware separately and have the settings separately, and like maybe upgrade firmwares without doing something else. But if you're really into this, you will build something like this is a tested thing. We will use this. We will make sure that it can't deviate from what we have set. So that's the thing. And like I said, maybe you want to have some specific settings that are individual to the device. Maybe you set like some VPN tunnel settings that are specific for this device, or you have names or passwords. But mostly they build a really, really structured template on this is how it's supposed to be done.
Great. So there's a couple of terms that we probably should talk about. What does digital twin mean?
Yeah, I mean, digital twin, sometimes they call it digital twin, they can call it the desired state. Basically, it means that if you look for the more simpler, I mean, I shouldn't say simpler, but there is a lot of platforms out there that is built on the old TR-069 standard, which was developed for operators, where you had like tens of thousands of devices. You couldn't do much, but you could deploy like a standard default template, and usually needed to keep the devices online to update them and make sure that everything got set. Modern sort of enterprise platforms uses what we call digital twin or desired state. The digital twin is basically like a router and the platform. So we don't even have to have the router online the first time to do the settings. We basically needs like the MAC address and the serial number, whatever we put in the platform. We can start to pull them into a workflow. We can pull them into a template. And when you bring that router online, the first thing it will do, it'll go up and check, say, is there any settings that I could sync back to me? That means that the digital twin is sort of the thing that sets the state. This is how you should look. This is the firmware you should have. This is the settings you should have. This is the software components you should be adding. That also comes to the third part of it, which is zero-touch configuration or zero-touch installation. Basically meaning that if you have...
You don't physically have to get to it.
No. And I mean, you can basically pull a router out of the box. If you have like the digital twin version of this, you can take the router out as long as this has the information has been passed into the system. It will wake up and it'll check that, oh, I have a settings, I have a template, I have a firmware, I have some settings I need to have. It'll pull that down. So if you get one of these tech guys that think that they can solve anything by like resetting it to factory defaults, well, they probably can. But I mean, we don't want to keep a router out that's reset to factory defaults. We wanted to instantly see that, oh, you shouldn't be like this. You should have this desired state. You should have these passwords. You should have this thing's enabled or disabled or whatever you think. So basically, you can send out a guy with like a paperclip and go like, keep this pushed in for 10 seconds and it'll reset and it'll come back if someone has managed to do something weird with this.
So in other words, the installer doesn't need to know how to configure a router. They just need to know how to plug it in.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So I mean, we have that on some big installations where we do public transportation, and the installer basically plugs it in. And in this case, they have done some very sweet things like when everything is configured and it's been tested, they have written some specific scripts for it. So they'll test the connection. If the connection to their system is up and running, it'll lit up the LED on the router telling the installer that, yep, we're happy. It's been set.
Great.
So
great. So now you're sitting there looking at all your routers in a dashboard of some sort, I assume.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? How does a person work in that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a small company, you probably use the standard settings, which will take you, I mean, the platform will show you all the routers that are online, if they're sort of using too much data. Yeah, if there's a problem. But if you come to the big instances, you'll see that if you have 5,000 routers, you will not be looking at 5,000 routers. You will not find the needle in the haystack. You need to be able to configure these systems to make sure that you see what you want to see.
Put them in groups?
Yeah, you can put them in groups. Of course, you can, of course, tell them that you only want to see routers that are
problematic,
having some problems, or that are over some limits, or that these are the ones that I want to check today. So basically, I mean, of course, someone probably wants to scroll over all their 5,000 routers and see that everything is green. But you need to be able to configure the system to work as you want it to work. That's really important.
Now, a lot of people have their own internal systems that's maybe legacy from something or other, and they want it to be able to talk with these platforms. Is that possible?
Yeah, the platform that has the API solutions usually have a possibility to do that. And normally, I would recommend it to have an API, because if you're a really big installation, you will, like you said, you will find out that, oh, I have a system. I will pull data for my inventory system. I will schedule some type of work during the weekends, or I will maybe want to do stuff that's not even possible in the system. So a REST API for the system will make you the ability to expand the system with external stuff, or integrate your normal sort of monitoring solutions or controlling solutions. Maybe you don't even want to punch in these like serial numbers or whatever. You get a list and you have that in an inventory system and say, okay, these routers has been sent out today to installers. Click enable them, and suddenly they're in the system and maybe even provisioned for be able to run.
Well, all right then. Do you have anything more to say about management systems?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things to say. Well, the thing that comes to mind is when you just don't choose a specific management platform, because the management platforms are usually connected to that manufacturer's routers. Right. So it comes down to picking a good ecosystem. So I mean,
so you might want to look at the management platform before you decide which router you want to buy.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of customers that gone out and they've bought a router that they think is cheap or good or whatever router, and suddenly it ends up like once you start expanding this, it will not work, because it'll fail on the management system part. So that is one thing you need to keep in mind. So I mean, getting the right router, and as well as getting the right management systems. There are some management systems that could work for multiple router manufacturers, but those are not the systems you will be able to use as an enterprise customer, or those will basically be TR069, so default stuff. And they don't do this with like digital twin stuff, and they have often struggle with all these like workflow part of it. So.
Well, all right. Thank you, Johan. That was quite enlightening. Hopefully we'll be able to deep dive in other things going forward. And I look forward to talking to you more, Johan.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.